Of course, here's a great detailed summary, very clear, deep, and simple. Cover everything important in the passage you share. Detailed summary. During the early medieval period in the Deccan region of India, there was great diversity, both in people's jobs and their religions. People worked in many different occupations, like farming, trade, warfare, priesthood, etc. And alongside that, there was a rich variety of religious beliefs spreading across the region. Among the religious groups, Shaivism, worship of Lord Shiva, was very strong. Many important Shaiva sects, like the Pashupatas, Kapakas, made sure they were active in the Deccan's major cities. Each Shaiva sect had its own style of worship, but all of them wanted a place and influence in important cities like Maniaketa, the capital of the Rastrakutas. At the same time, Jainism was also flourishing. The Jains built a wide network of monasteries, religious centers, which helped them stay powerful across western and southern India, even though they were criticized by Tamil Bhakti poets who strongly supported Hindu gods. Despite this criticism, Jainism remained a dominant religion in the region. In today's time, however, Jainism has almost disappeared from South India. It survives only in a few areas like the coastal regions of Karnataka, near the sea, warm and pleasant places. But Jainism is still very strong in Western India, especially in the states of Gujarat and Rajasthan. Back in the 9th century, however, Jainism was so powerful in the Deccan that if someone had said one day Jainism will vanish from South India, people would have laughed at the idea. It was unthinkable because Jainism was deeply rooted in society. After the Chalukya king Vikramaditya became a Shaivite follower of Shiva in the 7th century, the religious landscape started changing. But the Jains were smart and adaptable. They did not resist changes. Instead, they responded creatively, just like the Shaivas, to new political and religious trends. One clever strategy the Jains used was to reinterpret their religious ideas. In Jainism, a Jina, spiritual victor, is a person who conquers inner enemies like anger, greed, pride, etc. The Jains compared this spiritual victory to a real warrior winning on a battlefield. This made Jainism more attractive to warlike aristocrats, kings and nobles in South India who valued bravery and conquest. Even though Jainism violence, not even hurting an insect, it adjusted its message to appeal to powerful rulers. Thus, the 9th century Jains give us a wonderful example of how religions in India continue to evolve by changing, adapting, and responding to the needs of society and politics around them. In short, the Deccan had many jobs and many religions. Shaivas and Jains both had big influences. Jains survived criticism and stayed strong for a long time. Today, Jainism is gone from most of South India, but in Gujarat and Rajasthan. In the past, Jainism was so strong that no one believed it could vanish. Jains adapted cleverly, making their saints look like warriors to appeal to kings. This shows how religions evolved and changed in Indian history. Would you also like me to give you a mind map version, like a flowchart, to make it even easier to memorize? I can do that too if you want. All right. Now I'll give you a great detailed summary, very complete, simple, but thorough, so you deeply understand everything without missing a point. Detailed summary, Jainism's evolution in South India. 1. Inclusion of women and householders. South Indian Jain groups, like the Yapaniyas, allowed women to become nuns. This was a big change because earlier many religious groups only allowed men to become monks. They also welcomed householders, people with families, into Jainism, encouraging everyone to be involved in religious life, not just monks. 2. Adoption of Hindu-like practices. The Yapa Jains started adopting Hinduism. These practices included caste system, accepting social divisions like Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, which Jainism originally rejected. Permanent monasteries, building fixed monasteries that depended on agriculture for food and money instead of monks wandering and begging. Worship of goddesses, especially goddesses like Valamali, bearer of a fire garland, who provided protection and blessings. Astrology, performing rituals and stars to improve fortunes. 3. Expansion of temple culture. Jain schools built full temple establishments that were very active and lively. Ritual bathing of statues, idols with holy materials like milk and water. Festivals with dancing, singing, lights and community celebrations. Processions where idols were paraded around towns with music and joy. Musical events, soirees inside temples where devotional songs were sung. Rise of Jain wealth and influence. Jain monks and leaders became wealthy and powerful, much like the Shaiva Shiva-worshipping monks. They were able to build grand temples by themselves, or convince kings, royal grace, to fund and build temples for them. Jain temples became not just religious places, but also social and political centers. Number 5. Similarity between Jain and Shaiva temples. Jain temples were very similar to Shaiva temples. Same type of architecture, same artisans and builders, sthapatis, same elite patron classes, rich donors. Main difference, Jain temples were a bit plainer, more austere than Shaiva temples, which were richly decorated. Number 6. Long-term religious dominance. Because of these clever changes, Jainism remained a major religious force in South India for almost 800 years, alongside Shaivism. Their ability to adapt to social and political changes kept Jainism alive and strong. Number 7. Wider lessons about Indian religion. In real life, different religions, Jainism, Shaivism, acted similarly, even if their beliefs, theologies were different. This teaches us Indian religions developed together over time, shaped by the same social, economic, and political needs. Religion was both a reaction to society and a powerful force shaping society. In short, Jainism became flexible, practical, and rich. It adopted many social customs like caste and temple life. It survived and thrived by blending into South Indian society while keeping its core identity. Would you also like a one-page bullet? Of course, here's a very detailed, easy to understand summary of everything you asked about. HAP summary. In ancient South India, two powerful dynasties, the Gangas and the Rastrakutas, were fierce rivals. The Gangas were strong supporters of Jainism, a peaceful religion that taught non-violence and self-control. After a devastating war, the Rashtrakuta king Amoghavasha found himself in a very weak and unstable position. His control over the throne was shaky, and he needed a way to gain support and strengthen his rule. Following an example from history where an earlier king, Vikramaditya I, had gained strength by supporting the Shaiva sect, Amoghavasha decided to win favour with the Jains. He encouraged Jain writers, supported Jain temples and monasteries, and gave them money and resources. Amoghavasha and later Rashtrakuta rulers built many Jain temples and shrines, especially at places like Badami and Patadakol, important economic centres near the Malaprabha River. Even though the earlier Chalukya dynasty had fallen, the region remained valuable for trade and prosperity. However, it's important to note that Amoghavasha was not exclusively a Jain. In medieval India, religious boundaries were very flexible. People and kings often supported multiple religions at the same time. Amoghavasha himself, in his official inscriptions, called himself a devotee of Vishnu, Veera Narayana, and was known to have sacrificed his little finger to the goddess Mahalakshmi, showing strong devotion to Hinduism as well. Thus, the Jains were one among many powerful social groups in Amoghavasha's capital, Maniketa. The king carefully distributed his support, largesse, among all groups, Jains, Hindus, traders, and others, to maintain stability, peace, and secure loyalty across society. In short, Amoghavasha used religious patronage wisely, supporting in both Jains and Hindus to stabilize his kingdom after war, win widespread loyalty, and strengthen his rule during a fragile time. In 5 short bullet points, Gangas supported Jainism, Rashtrakutas were their rivals. Amoghavasha, after a terrible war, used Jainism for political strength. He built Jain temples, but also stayed loyal to Hindu gods like Vishnu and Mahalakshmi. In medieval India, religious loyalties were mixed and flexible. Amoghavarsha supported many groups to keep power and unify his people. Would you also like a super quick memory trick or mind map for this? Helps you remember it all in 1 minute. Just say yes if you want. All right, I'll give you a great detailed summary, easy to understand, complete, and step by step, so you get everything important from the passage in one place. Here's the full detailed summary. Detailed summary. 1. Amoghavarsha and poets. King Amoghavarsha, also called Vallabha, loved poets. Poets were very important to him personally, and they are important for us today because they give us information about his time. Amoghavarsha himself was a master of poetry and aesthetic theory, the study of beauty and art. He had strong personal opinions about what good poetry was and what was not. Number 2, rise of Sanskrit and poetry in the Deccan. Long ago, the Chalukya kings started using Sanskrit to look powerful and important. But by Amoghavarsha's time, Sanskrit had become much more common and prestigious. The new capital city, Manyaketa, was full of poets. Rich families and even Amoghavarsha himself competed to attract the best poets to their courts. Being a poet was a respected professional career in those days. Poets in royal life, elephants and horses. Example. Poets were involved in important royal ceremonies. When kings received gifts like elephants and horses, poets recited poems to make the gifts seem grand and special. Example 1. An elephant named Jadayagiri was sent as a tribute by the king of Kalinga, Odisha. Officials gave a detailed technical report about the elephant. A poet named Karikalaba recited poems praising elephants. Example 2. A famous white horse from Cambodia, likely Central Asia, was carefully chosen. Another poet named Vajivinoda sang poems praising the horse. Number 4. Amoghavarsha's travels and observations. Like kings before him, Amoghavarsha travelled across his kingdom, visiting cities, temples, monasteries, and vassal states, areas ruled by smaller kings under him. During his travels, he noticed a huge cultural difference. In cities, people spoke Sanskrit. They lived in a sophisticated intellectual world. In villages, people spoke Kannada. They passed stories and legends orally by speaking, not writing. Number 5. Respect from vassals and villagers. Ordinary people and smaller kings, vassals, were very much in awe of Amoghavarsha. They respected him deeply. In contrast, the rich nobles at the capital Manyaketa were less impressed because they were already powerful and smart. Essence, Amoghavarsha loved poetry and poets, helped poetry flourish in the Deccan, and understood the deep cultural divide between the elite Sanskrit world and the Kannada-speaking common people of his kingdom. Would you also like me to give you a small table summarizing it even faster, like a cheat sheet? It will help you revise super quickly later. Just say the word. Sure. Here's a great detailed summary of the passage. Summary. This passage is about Amoghavarsha, a king of the Rastrakuta dynasty, who ruled the Deccan Plateau in southern India during the 9th century. He was a ruler who deeply appreciated poetry and literature, especially in Sanskrit and Kannada, the local language of his region. Amoghavarsha's interest in poetry and stories. Amoghavarsha, as a young king, loved to hear local myths and stories. These stories were about kings, heroes, gods, and ancient epics like the Mahabharata and Ramayana. He was particularly fascinated by the Kannada-speaking world and its oral traditions, stories passed down by word of mouth. He also enjoyed listening to poets recite verses, and he rewarded talented poets from across his kingdom, like those from Patadakal and Okunda. This love for stories and poetry led him to begin thinking about creating a grand book or a magnum opus that would bring together all these local and ancient stories. However, this would require a lot of resources, money, time, and talented people. Challenges faced by Amoghavarsha. Despite his interest in literature and culture, Amoghavarsha faced several challenges. He was pressured to maintain his status as a powerful king. His kingdom needed wealth to reward loyal supporters and maintain its splendor. However, Amoghavarsha's military power was not as strong as that of his father or grandfather, who had won many wars. So Amoghavarsha couldn't rely on warfare and conquests like his ancestors did. He needed a different source of wealth and resources. The solution: global trade. During the 9th century, the world was changing and trade was becoming very important. Two powerful empires, the Abbasid Caliphate in the Middle East and the Tang dynasty in China, were growing. Both of these empires were very interested in global trade, buying and selling goods like spices, silk, and precious stones. The Indian Ocean was becoming a key trade route, and ships from different regions were increasingly interacting with India. This provided an opportunity for Amoghavarsha's kingdom to benefit from trade instead of relying on constant warfare. Amoghavarsha could use this new trade network to acquire wealth, goods, and luxury items without fighting wars. Amoghavarsha's vision: while Amoghavarsha focused on building a prosperous empire through trade, he also focused on culture. He saw an opportunity to grow his kingdom culturally through literature, art, and religious diversity. Instead of spending resources on military battles, he used trade to build his empire's wealth and power. This helped him support poets and other artists, allowing the cultural side of his empire to thrive. Through his wise use of trade, Amoghavarsha ensured his kingdom's economic strength and cultural growth, making it rich and powerful without needing to constantly fight wars.
Conclusion.
Amoghavarsha was a wise king who adapted to the changing times. He realized that trade could make his empire prosperous without the need for endless wars. He focused on encouraging poetry and culture, while also leveraging the growing trade routes to keep his kingdom rich. This allowed him to fulfill his ambitions both as a king and as a patron of arts and literature.
Key takeaways. 1.
Amoghavarsha was interested in poetry and local stories. 2. He wanted to create a great work combining all the myths and legends he heard. 3. He faced challenges because he didn't have the military power of his ancestors. 4. Instead of fighting wars, he turned to trade to make his empire wealthy. 5. The Abbasid Caliphate and Tang dynasty were growing, and their interest in global trade provided a new opportunity. 6. By focusing on trade and cultural development, Amoghavarsha maintained his kingdom's wealth and prestige. This passage gives us a glimpse of a visionary ruler, Amoghavarsha, who chose a peaceful path of trade and culture to strengthen his empire instead of relying on war and conquest. Sure, here's a detailed summary of the passage. Summary. The passage discusses the importance of India in the 9th century, highlighting how it became a central hub in the vast network of global trade and cultural exchange. Let's break it down into key points. 1. India's vast size and position. India is described as huge, and its geographical position in the center of the Indian Ocean, incredibly significant for trade in other parts of the world. The Indian Ocean surrounded India and acted as a bridge between Europe, Africa, and Asia. 2. India's role in global trade. By the 9th century, India had emerged as the central link in a global trading chain connecting these three continents. India was positioned due to its land access to trade routes across the Indian Ocean. It became a central point where goods from Europe, Africa, and Asia were exchanged. 3. India's resources and craftsmanship. India was rich in natural resources like spices, cotton, and precious metals, which were highly valued by people in other parts of the world. India also had a reputation for skilled craftsmanship, with products such as fine fabrics, jewelry, and metalwork being highly sought after. 4. Archaeological evidence of trade connections. The passage gives the example of Helgo, a Swedish island, where several archaeological discoveries have been made that link India to distant regions. These discoveries include a 6th century Buddha statue from Kashmir, India, found in Sweden, a bronze ladle from North Africa, Arabic coins, and Western European glass and metal objects. These findings show that there was global trade and that goods from India were being exchanged with distant regions like Europe and Africa. 5. India's central role in the global economy. India was part of a global trade network, and its location, resources, and craftsmanship made it the focal point for trade across the Indian Ocean. The exchange of goods, culture, and ideas through the Indian Ocean trade routes helped India build strong connections with other regions, making it an integral part of the medieval world economy. Conclusion. The passage highlights how, during the 9th century, India played a central role in the world's trade network. Its position in the middle of the Indian Ocean, combined with its natural resources and craftsmanship, made it a key player in connecting Europe, Africa, and Asia. Archaeological discoveries from distant regions show that India's goods and culture were being exchanged globally. India's position and resources allowed it to become a major economic and cultural center in the medieval world. This summary gives you a complete picture of how India, thanks to its geography, resources, and craft, became a central figure in global trade and cultural exchange during the 9th century. Here's a detailed summary of the passage. Context: the 9th century global interactions. By the century, many parts of the world were connected through trade, cultural people. This period was marked by a growing interaction between different regions across Afro-Eurasia, the combined landmass of Africa, Europe, and Asia, creating a web of global connections. 1. Movement of people. Scandinavians from Sweden and Norway started moving into the British Isles and also down the Volga River into Ukraine. This marked the beginning of migrations, where Jews started to travel, trade, and settle in new places. 2. The Frankish kingdoms. The Franks, living in what is now France, were learning and preserving knowledge, especially Latin, which was the language of ancient Rome. They kept this knowledge alive in monasteries, religious places where monks copied books. The Franks also made glass and metalwork, sending embassies, official visitors, to places like Iraq. And in return, they received elephants, which were a rare gift in Europe at that time. 3. Constantinople. Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, Turkey, was an important city. It was a place full of luxuries like perfumes, spices, silks, and gold. It was also a trade hub connecting various parts of the world. The city was a center of learning and cultural exchange, with palaces, libraries, and bustling ports. 4. The Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasid Caliphate, which ruled over parts of the Middle East, was a very powerful empire. They built Baghdad as a major center for trade, education, and scientific research. This empire helped link important trading regions like Egypt, Iraq, and Persia, modern-day Iran. Baghdad became the leading city for knowledge and innovation. 5. East Africa. Swahili Coast. On the Swahili Coast, East Africa, there were rich city-states that were deeply connected to India and other regions. These African cities traded valuable goods like gold, ivory, and ambergris, a substance from Wales. These goods were exchanged for items like spices and textiles from India. 6. Iran, Central Asia, and China. Iran had rich cities and used underground canals to bring water to dry areas. It was also a key stop in the trading network. Central Asia had oasis towns where people traded goods, especially along the famous Silk Road. China was a superpower by the 9th century under the Tang dynasty. It was involved in global trade and interacted with other regions. China's economic influence grew as it joined the international network. 7. Growing interest in trade. Europe, West Asia, East Africa, and East Asia were all beginning to recognize the importance of trade. They were focused on gaining profits and prestige, status or respect, from being part of the global trade system. This period marked a shift where different regions started to realize that by trading goods and ideas, they could gain wealth and power. Summary of key ideas. 1. Global interactions. By the 9th century, the world was becoming more connected due to trade, migration, and cultural exchanges. 2. Movement of people. Groups like the Scandinavians moved to new places in search of land, trade, or new opportunities. Countries like France, the Franks, Constantinople, Baghdad, and East Africa were all deeply involved in global trade, exchanging goods like glass, metalwork, gold, ivory, and spices. 4. Global networks. Trade routes linked different parts of the world, with China, the Abbasid Caliphate, and Swahili Coast being important centers of economic and cultural exchange. 5. China and Iran. Both China and Iran were important players in international trade, with China being a superpower and Iran using its trade routes for connecting different regions. Conclusion: the 9th century was a time when the world started to become a more interconnected place due to increased global trade and the movement of people. The Abbasid Caliphate, Constantinople, China, and parts of Africa and Europe were all important centers for trade, culture, and learning. The interactions between these regions helped shape the world, laying the foundation for the global connections we have today. This period shows how globalization began much earlier than many people think, and it was driven by trade, cultural exchange, and the movement of people across different continents. Here's a detailed and simplified summary of the passage. Overview of global interactions in the 9th century. By the 9th century, the world was becoming more connected through trade, with people moving goods, ideas, and culture across large distances. This period saw trade networks link together regions in Europe, Africa, and Asia. The Indian subcontinent, due to its geographical location, became a key center for this global exchange. South Asia's strategic role, South Asia, modern-day India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc., was at the center of these trade networks. The region had access to key resources, and its ports became crucial in connecting Europe, Africa, and Asia. Merchant organizations like the 500 Lords of Ihole played an important role in linking producers, people who made goods, with marketplaces where goods were sold. These groups helped facilitate long-distance trade across vast geographical distances. The role of merchant organizations. These organizations were powerful and could mobilize capital, large amounts of money. They helped protect their goods from dangers like piracy or natural disasters, and even hired mercenaries, soldiers, for protection. They also played a key role in connecting different markets globally, making sure that rare goods were traded and helping rulers secure important goods and resources. Importance of ports. For rulers like Amoghavasha, controlling important ports was vital. Ports allowed rulers to collect taxes from traders and gain access to luxury goods such as silk, gold, and spices, which helped maintain their power and prestige. The rulers' status and wealth were often tied to their control over trade routes and access to luxury goods. Debate on royal control of trade. There is some debate among historians about how much control rulers like Amoghavasha actually had over trade. Some believe that the kings directly controlled the trade, collecting taxes and profiting from it. Others think that merchant organizations were the true drivers of trade, while the kings benefited from it indirectly. Global trade and South Asia's contribution. South Asia was a major hub in the global trade network, with craftsmanship, agricultural products, and luxury goods being produced for trade. The region's trade wasn't limited to local markets. It extended to Africa, the Middle East, and China, making South Asia an important intermediary in the global exchange of goods. Evidence from Arab traders, archaeological findings, and inscriptions, written records, provide a clearer picture of how trade operated in South Asia during the 9th century, especially in the Rastrakuta Empire, with Zanjan being one of the key port cities. The 9th century saw unprecedented global trade interactions that were shaped by merchant organizations and rulers who controlled ports. South Asia, with its strategic location and wealth of resources, played a central role in this global trade. Rulers like Amagavarsha benefited from trade through taxes and access to luxury goods, though the exact extent of royal control over trade is still debated among historians. The evidence from trade records, archaeological discoveries, and accounts from travellers helps us understand the significant role South Asia played in the global trade network during this period. Here is a detailed summary of the passage. In medieval India, kings gave land to local leaders, such as temples, Brahmin landlords, and warlords, to help manage the land and resources. This was a strategy to create regional power bases and ensure better control over the kingdom. These local leaders, in return, had to help develop and improve the land, mainly by implementing irrigation systems and rainwater harvesting to support farming. This was important because it allowed farmers to grow more crops and provided a surplus of food and resources. The surplus agricultural produce that the landowners collected was taken to local markets. These markets, or exchange centres, began to grow as commercial hubs. These hubs became important trading points where food, crafts and luxury goods were exchanged. While the commercial economy was still developing, it wasn't yet enough to support large-scale specialization of artisans. Most artisans were not full-time workers, and they often supplemented their craft with farming or raiding. Only cities had enough demand for full-time artisans, such as weavers or metal workers, to support their craft as a main job. The king's efforts to improve the economy sometimes came at a high cost. The Deccan region, which was dry and difficult to farm, required major changes like irrigation systems to make it productive. To achieve this, kings sometimes forced people to comply with these plans. Villages that resisted were attacked and many people suffered, including women and children. These violent tactics were used to push through the king's economic and agricultural goals. On the other hand, the rich and powerful took advantage of the situation. The local leaders who were granted land could make money by controlling the farming and trade of resources. Those with social and financial capital, wealth, had the ability to exploit these opportunities for profit. Main points. 1. Land grants. Kings gave land to local leaders, temples, warlords, etc. to strengthen control over the kingdom. 2. Irrigation. These leaders were responsible for improving farming through irrigation and rainwater harvesting. 3. Surplus crops. The extra crops grown were sent to markets where they were traded for other goods. 4. Commercial hubs. Markets became commercial centres for trade, though the economy wasn't yet fully mature. 5. Artisans. Many artisans worked part-time and were not specialists, with full-time artisans mostly found in cities. 6. Violence. The king sometimes forced changes leading to violent attacks on villages that resisted, causing suffering. 7. Opportunities for the rich. Wealthy landowners and leaders took advantage of the situation to profit from trade and control land. This passage shows how the king's policies helped grow the economy, but often came with exploitation, suffering for the poor, and benefits for the rich. Here is a detailed summary of the passage you've provided. 1. The rise of the 500 Lords of Aihole. The 500 Lords of Aihole were a powerful group of local leaders and merchants who played a crucial role in shaping the economy and trade in the Deccan region of India during the 9th century. This group expanded their influence through trade, land ownership, and strategic positioning. They were not just wealthy landowners, but also very involved in the growing commercial networks of the region. Part 2. The role of King Vikramaditya sect and Queen Lokamahadevi. A century before the 9th century, Vikramaditya II, a king from the Chalukya dynasty, had waged wars against the Pallava dynasty in southern India. During his reign, his queen, Lokamahadevi, had constructed a temple, signalling the Chalukyas' strength and influence. This time set the stage for the economic and political changes that were about to take place in the region. 3. Expansion under the Rastrakutas. In the late 8th century and early 9th century, the Rastrakuta dynasty began to dominate the Deccan. They were aggressive and sought to expand their territory under kings like Dhruva and Govinda III. This political shift had an impact on the 500 lords of Aihole. Despite the Rastrakutas' increasing power, the 500 lords managed to expand their influence. They did this by moving southwards and establishing a foothold in Pudukkottai, an important town located in the Pala River Valley of Tamil Nadu. This location became a critical hub for trade between the Deccan region and the Tamil country. Strategic importance of Pudukkottai. The new location at Pudukkottai allowed the 500 lords to control key trade routes. This was significant because the Tamil country and the Deccan region were two economically prosperous areas. At the crossroads of these two regions, Pudukkottai became an ideal location for managing trade and commerce. The 500 lords were able to bridge the gap between two very important commercial regions. This expansion gave them access to goods from both regions, and they played a critical role in the exchange of commodities like spices, textiles, and other valuable items. Hamad 5. How the lords benefited from Rashtrakuta power. Although the Rashtrakutas were expanding their empire, the 500 lords used their knowledge of trade and their connections to their advantage. The political and military situation in the region created opportunities for the lords to establish themselves in important trade centres like Pudukkottai and become an even more powerful force in southern India. 6. Conclusion of the success of the 500 lords. The 500 lords of Aihole were able to leverage the political instability caused by the Rashtrakutas to expand their influence. They became one of the most important merchant groups in southern India by securing access to trade routes and key locations like Pudukkottai. Their success shows how local power and trade were deeply connected in medieval India, and how a group of landowners and merchants could play a critical role in the economy of the region. In simple terms, the 500 lords of Aihole were powerful landowners and merchants in medieval India. They started in Aihole but expanded their influence to Pudukkottai, a region vital for trade between the Deccan and Tamil Nadu. Even though the Rashtrakutas were gaining power, the 500 lords managed to grow their influence by controlling important trade routes. Their strategic position in Pudukkottai allowed them to trade goods between two prosperous regions, making them incredibly wealthy and powerful. The 500 lords show how trade, politics, and location played key roles in shaping power in medieval India. This expansion of the 500 lords was not just a result of their economic skills, but also a product of the political shifts in the region. The combination of strategic positioning and knowledge of trade helped them become one of the most powerful and influential merchant groups in southern India during the 9th century. Here's a detailed summary of the passage. 1. Persian and Christian merchants on the west coast. Zoroastrian and Christian merchants from Persia, modern-day Iran, travelled to India's west coast and began visiting every year. Some of these merchants settled down in India. Over time, they intermarried with the local people and became part of the community. These merchants formed guilds, groups of people working together for common goals. One of these groups was called Anjuvanam, which was named after the Persian word Anjuman, meaning association or group. 2. The role of local merchants. Manigramam. On the Malabar coast, a region in southwestern eastern India, there was another merchant group called the Manigramam. This was an indigenous Indian merchant group. The Manigramam worked closely with local Christians, and their role was central to the trade of pepper, a highly valuable commodity from the region. 3. Collaboration between the groups. The Manigramam focused on buying and sorting pepper from the local area, while the Anjuvanam worked with their international networks to sell the pepper to buyers in different parts of the world. The Manigramam ensured that the local chiefs allowed the trade to happen smoothly. In return, the Anjuvanam helped finance the trade and find buyers. Number 4, the wide trade network. These merchant groups were not just limited to trading within India. They had global networks stretching across regions like Iran, Iraq, Central Asia, the Mediterranean world, North Africa, even Spain. This vast network made sure that goods like pepper from India were in demand in far-off places, making India a key player in international trade. Number 5. Summary of merchant collaboration. The Anjuvanam, Persian traders, and the Manigramam, local Indian merchants, played essential roles in pepper trading along the west coast of India. The Manigramam focused on local trade, making sure the local leaders allowed it, while the Anjuvanam used their international connections to sell pepper abroad and secure money for the business. These groups' merchant networks stretched to multiple parts of the world, from Iran and Iraq to the Mediterranean, North Africa, and even Spain. They created a large-scale global trade network connecting India with many countries. This story highlights the complex trading relationships that spanned continents during the 8th–12th centuries, with India playing a significant role in connecting the East and West through commerce. Here's a great detailed summary of the passage. 1. The 500 Lords and the expansion of trade. The 500 Lords were a powerful group of merchants in the Deccan region of India, based in Aihole. They controlled the trade network that connected agricultural producers in India to where goods could be sold. The 9th century, these merchants had expanded their influence, establishing a powerful presence in the region and becoming key players in trade. The role of the Anjuvanam and Manigramam merchant groups. Along with the 500 Lords, there were 2 other important merchant groups operating along the west coast of India. 1. Anjuvanam, a group of Persian merchants who worked in India. Their name is derived from the Persian word Anjuman, meaning association or group. 2. Manigramam, an indigenous Indian group from Malabar known for controlling the trade of a highly valuable spice in the ancient world. These 2 groups cooperated in the trade of pepper, with the Manigramam focusing on the collection and sale of pepper, and the Anjuvanam using their international network to find buyers and secure funds for the trade. 3. Trade networks expanding beyond India. The merchants in India were not just dealing with local trade. They were part of a global trade network that stretched from India to places like Persia, Iran, Iraq, Central Asia, North Africa, and even Spain. Arab merchants also played a crucial role, moving goods on ships that began to travel year-round, unlike earlier when they only traveled during the monsoon season. They sailed from Siraf on the Persian Gulf to ports in India, bringing in huge profits. 4. The role of Indian rulers in supporting trade. Indian rulers, especially along the west coast, saw the growing trade as a way to increase their wealth. They helped by collecting taxes on goods traded, like how governments today collect taxes on goods and services. These rulers also took part in the luxury trade, buying and selling luxurious goods like silk, jewels, and horses. They ensured that trade continued to flourish by creating a stable environment for merchants to do business. 5. The Shilaharas and the unification of coastal trade centres. The Shilaharas, a ruling dynasty, controlled several important ports on the west coast of India. They successfully conquered and unified 3 key trading centres. 1. Gokapattanam, modern Old Goa. 2. Balipatana. 3. Chandrapura, known to Arabs as Sindhapur. These cities became a single unified trading region, creating one of the largest trading hubs in the region. This helped increase the volume of trade and the region's wealth. 6. Amoghavasha's role in the growing trade economy. At the same time the Shilaharas were unifying the trade centres, Amoghavasha returned to Pekata, another important region in the Deccan. This period, around 830 AD, marked a time of economic growth and increasing trade, with both local rulers and merchants benefiting from the expanding network of trade. has key takeaways. The 500 lords played a central role in connecting India's agriculture and local markets with global trade networks. Merchant groups like the Anjuvanam, Persian traders, and Manigramam, Indian pepper traders, facilitated the flow of valuable goods like pepper, spices, and luxury items across regions. Arab merchants expanded their trade routes and operated year-round, bringing profits and goods from the Middle East and beyond. Indian rulers supported the growing trade through taxes and involvement in the luxury goods trade. The Shilaharas played a crucial role by uniting coastal trading cities into a powerful trading hub. The return of Amoghavarsha to the throne marked a period of increasing wealth and trade across the Deccan region. This period in Indian history, 9th century, was a time when trade flourished and powerful merchant groups and rulers created networks that connected India with the wider world. Through these connections, both local economies and international trade grew, and important cities became key trading centers in the global economy. Of course, here's a great, detailed, very clear summary of everything you asked in simple, easy-to-understand language, like the world's best teacher would explain. Summary are West Coast ports of India being hubs under Rastrakutas. Around 1100 to 1200 years ago, 9th century, Arab traders from West Asia, places like Arabia and Persia, were traveling by ships across the Arabian Sea to reach India's west coast for trade. They came to important ports such as Cambaya, Cambay, Gujarat, Sandan, Sanjan, Gujarat, Tana, Thine, Maharashtra, Subarachal, Maharashtra, Sainabar, Mulaybar, Malabar Coast, Kerala. Most of these ports, except Malabar and maybe Cambay, were under the control of a powerful Indian dynasty, Rastrakutas. Who were the Rastrakutas? They were a mighty Indian royal family. They ruled a large part of India from deep inside the land, not near the sea. They supported and encouraged trade because they knew it brought wealth and power. One of their most famous kings was Amoghavarsha, whom Arab traders called the Balhara or Vallabha Raja. Arab traders respected and loved him. They said no Indian king loved Arabs more than the Balhara king. This showed that Amoghavarsha treated foreign traders with great kindness and respect. What happened at these ports? West Asian traders, Muslims, Zoroastrians, Jews, Christians, settled permanently in these Indian ports. They lived peacefully alongside local Indian traders. Religious differences did not stop them from doing business and making friendships. Rashtrakuta kings allowed these foreigners to build mosques for Muslims, follow their own religious laws for personal matters like marriage and inheritance, even appointed Muslim officers to help manage these laws. Mixing of cultures in places like Chol, Maharashtra, West Asian fathers and Indian mothers had children. This created a new mixed community called the Bayasira. This shows that it wasn't just trade happening, it was also cultural mixing, friendship, new families, and peaceful living. Key points at a glance. Trade. Big ships brought Arab and Persian traders to India's coast ports. Ports. Important ports were Cambay, Sanjan, Thine, Sapara, Chol, and Malabar. Rashtrakutas. Powerful rulers who controlled most ports and supported trade. Balhara Amoghavarsha. Famous Rashtrakuta king, very friendly to Arabs. Religious freedom. Traders could build mosques and follow their religious customs. Cultural mixing. West Asian traders married Indian women. New communities were born. Peaceful world. Trade, not fighting, was the focus. Different religions and cultures lived side by side. In one simple line, the Rashtrakuta rulers, especially Amoghavarsha, helped make India's west coast a peaceful, rich, multi-religious trading paradise where Arabs, Persians, Jews and Indians lived, traded and grew together. Would you also like a visual chart or a mind map to make this even easier to remember? Just say, yes, show me! All right, now I'll give you a great detailed summary, easy to read, clear and very complete. so you understand everything properly. Here's the full detailed summary of the passage you gave. Detailed summary. In the 10th century, during the Rastrakuta dynasty's rule in India, the country had a rich and colourful culture where people from different lands and religions lived and worked together. Immigrants who came to India from other countries, like Persia, modern-day Iran, happily mixed into the local society and became an important part of life there. One fascinating example of this cultural mixing is the story of Madhumati, a Persian Muslim immigrant. His original Persian name was Muhammad, son of Shahryar, but when he settled in India, his name was changed into Sanskrit style, becoming Madhumati, son of Sahyarahara, to fit into Indian language and traditions. Madhumati was not an ordinary immigrant. He became very powerful. Around the 10th century, he was appointed by the Rastrakuta kings as the governor of Sanjan and the surrounding northern Konkan coast, a very important region for overseas trade and global connections. His leadership was very important because the Rastrakutas had strong interests in international trade and needed skilled men to manage coastal areas. Official records called Prashastis praised Madhumati, saying he had defeated the chiefs of all the harbours. This shows that Madhumati was an expert in handling ships, sea battles and protecting important ports. He was a skilled seaman and naval commander. Madhumati was not only a military leader, he was also known for his generosity and public service. He spent money on charity, such as setting up 2 free ferry services to help people travel across rivers without paying, establishing a feeding house where he provided rice, curries and ghee, Indian food, for free to anyone who needed it. Madhumati worked closely with a diverse city council that included both Indian merchants, West Asian, foreign merchants from Arabia and Persia. He had an Indian minister who helped him run things. This minister's Brahmin aristocrat friend, a wealthy and powerful Brahmin, even built a monastery or temple in the city with Madhumati's full approval. This shows how Muslims and Hindus cooperated in that society. West Asians, Arab traders, Persian merchants were treated with respect. They were often called as witnesses when Indians donated land to temples. This shows how closely different communities worked together. Madhumati himself gave a land grant to a Durga temple, a Hindu goddess temple, showing that he respected local Hindu traditions despite being a Muslim. However, not everyone was always happy with this mixing. Sometimes orthodox, strict religious groups disapproved of such close cooperation between people of different religions. Also, attitudes were not the same everywhere. They varied based on region and ethnicity. Some Arab Muslim traders, for example, had to get special permissions to trade with non-Muslims. Indian merchants sometimes wanted separate eating areas to protect their caste purity. Despite these occasional tensions, the overall picture was positive. People from different backgrounds maintained good business and personal relationships. Trade, culture and ideas flowed freely between Indians, Arabs and Persians. The Rastrakutas were deeply connected to the globalizing world of the 9th and 10th centuries. Their society was multi-ethnic, many races, multilingual, many languages, cosmopolitan, open and global, and inclusive. In even simpler final words, a Persian Muslim named Madhumati came to India. He rose to great power under the Rastrakutas. He ruled an important coastal region. He helped people through charity. He worked with Indian and foreign traders. He respected Hindu traditions too. Although some strict people disapproved, mostly everyone lived and worked together peacefully. Rastrakuta India was a lively, mixed, globalized world. Would you also like me to give a mind map diagram of this? It will show the entire story visually in one page. It would make remembering it super easy. Want me to do that too? Of course, here's a great detailed summary of what you shared in very simple words and easy flow with full coverage of every idea. Summary: why the Rastrakutas focused on coastal trade. The Rastrakutas were rulers in the Deccan region of India, middle part of India. Even though they lived far from the sea, they still worked hard to control trade happening on the coasts, places where ships came from other countries. Why? Because controlling coastal trade gave them three big benefits. One, strategic, for their army. They needed horses for their army, especially strong Arabian horses. Good horses came by ship, so they needed to control ports to get them. Two, political, to show power. Controlling trade made them more powerful among other kings and kingdoms. Ports brought weapons, goods, and made the kingdom important. And three, economic, to make money. Trade brought gold, silver, clothes, spices, horses, and more. By taxing goods and ships, Rastrakutas became very rich. How did they show their global thinking? Govinda III, one of their great kings, did something special. He made gold coins called dinara. These coins showed himself as a shirtless warrior wearing a turban sitting on a strong Arab horse. In one hand he held a special sword with a hook for deadly fighting. His other hand was raised proudly. The coins also had Arabic-style decorations because they admired Arabic art. Indian lucky symbols like a Garuda, eagle, a lotus flower and a conch shell. The coins called Govinda III Apratihata, which means invincible, nobody could defeat him. Why coins like this? Because coins travel everywhere, and every trader or king who saw them would know this king is modern, brave, strong and rich. Important bigger point, Rastrakutas were not old-fashioned or stuck in old ways. They were smart and open to new technologies, new goods and global trade. They loved art from both India and foreign lands. They adapted to new military needs and the latest trends, just like smart rulers around the world. Later, even the Vijayanagara kings, 600 years later, also depended on foreign horses from the Portuguese and Arab traders, just like the Rastrakutas had done. Short one-line takeaway. The Rastrakutas were smart, global-minded rulers who used coastal trade to build strong armies, show political power, and make their kingdom rich and famous. Would you also like a mind map? Simple diagram to quickly visualize everything in one picture? It will help you revise super fast. Should I make it for you?